if you move in authenticity from the beginning, you never have to perform. People already know what they're getting. And it's the same thing when they meet me, when they meet my team, they know what they're getting. We're showing up. They know they're going to be cared for. I can't think of anyone on the team who is not a heart-centered person naturally as a whole. But yes, we don't perform because you will always have to perform. If you show up and you're code switching and you're doing all of this, then that's what that client's going to expect every time they see you. And that is going to exhaust you. And there's no need to work in exhaustion when you can work in authenticity and still shine. I feel like authenticity shines brighter than a performance any day.
Welcome to Unpacked Culture Chronicles. I'm Danielle Marshall, an equity strategist and executive coach, and I'm thrilled to have you here. This podcast is all about exploring cultural differences, similarities, and the ways that we can begin to bridge across them. Together, we're going to dive into meaningful conversations with guests from all walks of life. We'll share stories, insights, and practical strategies for navigating the complexity of culture in our workplaces, communities, and personal lives. I first met our guest today, Robin Flemming, at a conference, and what really stood out to me immediately was just how she lives out this connection between authenticity and excellence. And through her work at Reflective Edge, she's really helping women-led businesses shape brand stories that honor their culture, their identity, and impact. And so I'm just really thrilled to be able to welcome you to the show today, Robin. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you today? I'm
I
excited.
am excellent. Thank you. It's so good to be able to spend some time with you. And I know I just said a little bit about your business, but why don't you introduce yourself in your own words to our audience?
Okay, so I am Robin Flemming. I am the founder of the Reflective Edge, and we are a full-service branding agency. I do have two business partners in that endeavor, and that is Cassandra Riddick and Michelle Johnson, whose pen name is Rain's Pen. And I am a photographer by trade. I also have some skills in my back pocket from corporate America. What else? Oh, I also have another arm called the Vision Board Media. And we rally behind social initiatives and also teach other creators how to do heart-centered work and tell stories without exploiting communities.
Love that. I think we have some synergy there. We can definitely dive into that a little bit more. I am curious to talk about so many different things about your business, but I know in preparation for the call, one of the things that you mentioned is that you have come to the work that you're doing right now with Reflective Edge, and you work with an all-Black team. And that comes with its own culture and expectations. And I'm just, as another Black woman here who may have to navigate this at times, how do you set the tone with clients who may not be used to working with a team in particular that refuses to perform outside of their cultural norms?
That's a good question. And I think it's a matter of when the client meets me, I'm me. And so, and the team, I'm not saying they're like me, but we do have synergy. So when you meet me, you almost meet my team. Like you're meeting the different personalities. Some are a little bit more bubbly, some are more reserved, but we do show up and we do not perform because that's what we don't do, but we do a great job without performance, and the team is never pressured to perform. But people get it mixed up with culture when it comes to Blackness and professionalism, and they act like Blackness is not professionalism.
Yeah.
And Blackness and professionalism can live in the same space, and they do live in the same space oftentimes because w we wrote the blueprint on customer service, if you think about it,
Say
so,
more about that. I'm kind of curious where you're going with that.
I mean, if you think about it, we wrote the blueprint on customer service in a way that, to me, predates all the way back to when we were enslaved people, and the way that we had to serve people, but we put our own spin on it. We put our own respect on it. We created the standards in America of what customer service should be. Like we were the original customer service people before we were paid to be customer service people. Like,
Yeah.
so, and so to me, the blueprint for customer service comes from us. We were the people who were doing it. Even after we were enslaved people and we were free people, we still had jobs in hotels and restaurants and all of those things, and servers and the service industry, which they try to put black and brown people in. And so in my opinion, we are the blueprint of customer service. And so the majority of Black people that I know are very customer service driven. We're very articulate and we perform well. We do have our own culture. We do have a little bit of ratchetness, and we all can keep that, and put that in. But we also, majority of us also carry a level of respect because we understand what that's like not to receive it. So that's what I mean by, like, I think we're the blueprint
Yeah.
of customer
So,
service. So
okay, so you came out the door swinging on this one. I'll be honest, I've never thought about it in the way that you just articulate it. And I can feel a little bit of tension in between. You are right in the sense that we were viewed as
mhm,
servers of other
mhm,
people, right?
right.
Particularly during the period of enslavement. Um, and I can imagine that that has carried on in some ways, but I also feel this tension because we do not need to necessarily be in positions of service today for other people. But the work that you're doing very much is service based because you're attending to your client's needs. So I just think I'm gonna have to sit with this a little bit more. I don't necessarily disagree with you on this, but I'm like, how do I feel? And so I need to process that one a little bit.
And so, I mean, and I'm not saying it in a negative way, like we are servants. I'm saying it in a way that how a lot of times the media will perceive us as unprofessional, or like we have to be reminded of being professional, or you have to perform to be professional. And I don't believe that you have to perform to be professional, because we're rooted in respect and we're already rooted in those things. And
Yeah.
so when we're moving, and those are just people aspects to me. Like, a person is respectful. If a respectful person is white or black, green, gold, brown, yellow, is a respectful person. And if we as people are being respectful and we are keeping service first and keeping serving our clients, or keeping um, any of that, then, and naturally, especially black women, we're nurturers. Nurturing is service, like, so I just feel like we naturally are going to come correct. And that is something that doesn't have to be performed. Now, it may look a little different when it comes to whitewashing, or to,
Sure.
you know, uh, having to code switch and all of that. There's a difference there, but naturally, I feel like as a people, we know how to treat people. And
Yeah.
that's all I'm getting at.
So and I can appreciate that because I think that if you look at our historical roots, like many black people come from originally some collectivist cultures where we really care for the community rather than just our individual
Mhm.
needs in that moment. And so while I would not necessarily make the connection normally to service, it is about being of service to others, right? Your community,
Mhm.
whether it's your family, your neighbor that's next door, or anyone that comes from your tribe originally, like that would have
Mhm.
been a piece of service. So I want to stay on this performance piece for
Mhm.
just a second because one of the other things that you said to me is that if you perform once, you're gonna always have to perform. So I really want to know what that means to you, what it looks like in your industry, and like how you work around that.
I think that if you perform once, if I feel like, and I've said that if you perform once, you always have to perform, because then you have to keep up the performance to maintain your reputation. If you move in authenticity from the beginning, you never have to perform. People already know what they're getting. And it's the same thing when they meet me, when they meet my team, they know what they're getting. We're showing up. They know they're going to be cared for. I don't I can't think of anyone on the team who is not a heart-centered person naturally,
Mm,
as a whole. So when we show up, we are showing up that way. And I think the word service gets a negative connotation sometimes, right? And really, it's just for me, it's just it's leading with your heart. It's moving in what you feel is right and showing up. But yes, we don't perform because you will always have to perform. If you show up and you're code switching and you're doing all of this, then that's what that client's going to expect every time they see you. And that is going to exhaust you. And there's no need to work in exhaustion when you can work in authenticity and still shine.
Yeah.
I feel like authenticity shines brighter than a performance any day.
Yeah, that I mean, that resonates with my spirit for a lot of reasons, like and I'm not gonna say that I don't code switch occasionally, but it is rarer and rarer each day because I just to your point, like, it's exhausting, number 1, but 2, I just wanna show up as who I am, right? Like, and it tells me something, and I kinda wonder how this feels in your own business, but, like, I wanna work with people who can see me in my entirety. They appreciate what I have to bring, what I have to say, and therefore, like, they end up being my better client. So if I feel like I have to perform for you, it's not usually a good fit because I'm sending my representative, if you will, in to meet with you as opposed to the person who's actually behind all of the strategy, all of the coaching, all of whatever we're doing together. So,
Exactly.
yeah. You have a way of asking, I think, really powerful questions. I had not too long ago gone through my own brand strategy, but you said something that tickled me. You mentioned this question that you ask all your clients when they're first starting. Um, are you telling the truth about yourself? Right. And so tell me more about that. What does that mean when you're, thinking about brand strategy? How do you link those together?
I link it together because a lot of times people are finding that they're not connecting with who they feel like they want as their ideal client because their brand isn't necessarily telling the truth about who they are. And so, um, and when I say, is your branding telling the truth? That to me, that is a round table, like a whole fold thing. Like, is it telling the truth in your copy? Is it telling the truth in your visuals? Is it telling the truth in the way that you show up? Because you imagine if you have an excitement brand, right? Like you have a brand that's exciting and it has a lot of energy
Right.
behind it, right? Like a Red Bull or or something like that. And then you have all this energy, you have an excitement brand, your website's exciting, your content is exciting. And then the client comes and they sit and have a consultation with you and you are dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you are you're monotone, you're dry, you seem disinterested. Is that telling the truth? So now your client is confused, or the person who was wanting to be your client is now confused because what they saw was exciting, and now that what they're meeting is gray. They thought
Hmm.
they were getting yellow and purple, and now they've gotten 7 shades of gray, and they don't really understand. And so,
Right.
and that doesn't mean that shades of gray is wrong for a brand because 7 shades of gray has their own client base, right? So it just means that, is that an alignment? Is it telling the truth? Is it also telling the truth about who you are? And when it comes to culture, like, is your brand telling the truth about the culture that you represent and the culture that you're trying to connect with, even as your client base?
Yeah.
Is it telling the truth for that? It's almost like the bait and switch. I seen the other day this woman who made all this money, um, because she sold all of this MAGA gear, because she portrayed to be a person who created a business that was a MAGA like fan and all of this, and really she was deceiving the entire group of people and capitalizing off of them. And I'm sure they're sick when they found out that this was created by a Black woman, right?
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like, so, and I just saw this, like I just saw this, and she raised so much money, I think that she was able to pay for her schooling. Um, and so
Good for her, and
like, good for her. But, like, so it's just kind of like, oh, like, so
yeah,
it's interesting. And it worked because it was a product, but most of my clients are service-based providers. So it's like, is your branding telling the truth because you're meeting people or they're getting into your ecosystem and it's not what they thought it was going to be. And that could even be in your messaging around what it is that you actually do. It doesn't
Mm,
necessarily have to be around your personality or your colors or anything like,
sure.
but sometimes our messaging isn't what we do, or how we do it. I myself went through that. I previously had a consultancy company, and my messaging and what I was putting out didn't meet and or match what I make created the brand for. So therefore it wasn't telling the truth. That didn't mean I wasn't making money, but it wasn't being truthful because what I was there to do was not do implementation. I was there to do consulting, but I allowed it to take on implementation, which then turns into something else. So like is and that's what I mean by like, is your brand telling the truth? Because if you don't know your brand story, how do you tell it?
Yeah. I appreciate that on a couple of levels because I know, most people have probably come across a company at some point in time where from the outside looking in, everything's wonderful. This is a community centered, we love on our employees, we have the best benefits. And then you talk to people who actually work there and that is so far from the truth, and they're like, this isn't the culture. So I think about this both in terms of your brand, what you're selling, whether it's service or product to people, but additionally, like, what is the space, the culture that you're cultivating for your staff? Like, are you in alignment with what you say your values are, or are you sort of having a departure from that, right? And I could see it working both ways because there's not clarity on like what they actually want to do in this moment, their truth.
And I agree. And speaking of staff, that also like peers and shows up in your staff, right? You can usually look at a person's staff and see their brand alignment because
Mm,
people people don't often think of the people working for them as being part of their brand or being reflective of their brand, but they actually are, right?
yeah.
Like, so, I find that sometimes I'm working with people and they're talking about their staff and how it's not working out. And normally I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, what is your brand story? And then I understand the brand story. And then I look at the staff person, I just see, oh, well, there's complete disalignment in this anyway, either disalignment in their skill set and they're just not being properly utilized, or misalignment in they just don't match the brand. And it's
Mm,
okay. It's okay to acknowledge this person is not a good fit for my brand.
yeah.
Um,
I can see that. Like I've definitely seen a couple of companies that I have personally worked in where there's someone that might be a little bit of an outlier. They don't believe in the mission of the organization or they believe in going a different way. And I think we have to be careful to some degree with that because a brand might be used by the wrong person as a gatekeeping mechanism. And so like I have to hold space for that, but at the same time, even within my own company, I don't want to work with people who don't believe in what we do. Like fundamentally, there has to be alignment there because the mission's really important in terms of my own work. And I suspect the same is true for you. And so you're looking for people who can naturally come in and they may have diversity of ideas, ideologies, all these things, but can you commit to the mission of our work?
exactly. Exactly. But I do want you to go back to they're using it as a form to gatekeep because I want to know
Okay.
more.
Okay. So like when we talk about like using this as a gatekeeper, sometimes people will say, like, I'm looking for this type of person, right? They have to fit our culture here. And I
Mhm.
can understand that on one hand, but what does that mean? So depending on who's hiring, your culture might mean I need you to think exactly like I do. You need to look like I do. You need to use the same terminology I use. We need to be in alignment. And so what that often means, particularly from a racial identity standpoint, is when we go to hire people that may not be in the dominant culture, they're gatekept because, oh, you don't speak proper English, or I've noticed, the way that you frame things isn't in alignment with, again, our brand, our culture. And
Mhm.
it's simply because they're not allowing space for people to bring in their own norms and values. And I'm not saying that, again, that you should have people on your team that are vastly a departure from what you're trying to accomplish. is there room for people simply to be their own individual selves, in that moment as well? So it's, I have to look at it um, both ways in that sense, right? Or how are our clients going to respond to you? So people can use that as a gatekeeping technique.
Mhm.
Also, like, well, they're used to talking to certain people again who look a certain way, speak this language of our organization, and you don't fit that mold. Therefore, we can't hire you. So sorry.
I am oh my god, that's a whole podcast by itself. But but no, I totally agree. I totally agree. And what they don't understand is, like, the alignment doesn't come with culture, it comes with mission. Like, so, I is it can this person fulfill your mission? Are they aligned in the mission? Because that may not be important to them. And like you said, a lot of people use that as a way to gatekeep when really they're missing good people because they are aligned with the mission. They
Yeah.
are people that could do that and they just have a different and ooh, you just said a word. I'm
Yeah. I mean,
ruminating
I
on that.
personally, I am looking for the
Mhm,
mission alignment, regardless of whether it's for my company or, I've worked for many
mhm.
nonprofits over the years. I need you to be in step with us on that mission. That is like critical. But in terms of the diversity of experiences, of ideas, how you do things, my way is not necessarily the best way. And so, like, if I gatekeep you because you don't fit the mold of what I think a successful employee is in this instance, I may actually be doing more damage to my company than helping it at that moment because I've lost out on all these different perspectives that could have helped us create a better product, create a better service, and I don't even know it because all I know is I want you to do it the way I want to. Um, you know,
Absolutely.
we we talk about this with respect to like boards and hiring a lot, but a lot of times people hire for diversity, meaning, we want you, you're different racially, you're different sexual orientations, religion, so forth. And then they onboard for similarity. So it's like we welcome your differences, but now that you're here, be more like us.
Mhm.
And so, like, that's what I mean, like, where this gets a little bit interesting in terms of the gatekeeping, because even if you let them in the door, sometimes the answer is, well, that's great that you represent this group, but we need you to behave like the rest of the team. And so we're minimizing away, like, who this person is, what was important in their culture to begin with.
Ooh.
So, so anyway, this is your interview. So let me get back to some things about you. But I do love a good question thrown in. So you feel free to ask questions as we go along. But I'm wondering again, like as you're working with this team, mostly women of color in this case. What have you learned about like how they show up in brand spaces? Like what have you had to do either I don't know. Like I'm not sure how I even want to ask this question. Like, what does it feel like to work with an all Black woman team?
Okay. Well, our team isn't all women.
Okay, thank you.
Um, and so we do have 2 men on our team, and my stylist, and, we have a business developer, named Dan Bradley, and our stylist is, Michael Corey. And so we do have 2 men on the team, but, we are primarily women. Now, I will say that 97% of our clients are women.
Okay, okay,
And so far. Any minute wanna challenge that, feel free. But so far, 97% of our client base has been women. And I think that, I think that is because we do show up primarily with women, but I think that, it happens because there's a way and I don't wanna get into, like, battle of the sexes or anything like
sure,
that, but, like, there is a way that women hear and take care of, I would say, I don't want to say insecurities, but for lack of a better word, insecurities or things that a person is more shy on. And I feel like women have a way of hearing that without it ever having to be said. And so we have a way of integrating that into our process that there is comfortability built around that, especially because people are so vulnerable with us in their business, but also in themselves because the majority of people who come to me end up not wanting to necessarily even do it. like, so they don't wanna be in front of the camera. They don't wanna, they don't wanna have to go through they don't wanna have to flush out or have to write a new bio and talk about themselves and do all these things. And I find that working with so many women that it's kind of quietly understood without the, pressure for you to just get over it, but more of a let's navigate through it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you think having and I know you just said that you have some men on the team as well, but like just the women's presence, like maybe they're leaning into that vulnerability differently.
Yes, I would say so. I would say
Mm, yeah.
yes.
That is interesting because culturally, like, we do show up in spaces different because of the genders, and just how we're socialized, so I hadn't really considered that, but I love that if they're able to be more supportive, it does maybe speak to who you will serve best in that moment. Though, I hear you already issued a challenge to the men that are not working with you. It sounds like Robin's willing to take you on as well. Um, but like, okay, so if we're diving into what it means to like really get people to open up, that can be challenging. I mean, like I experience it also as a coach. Like sometimes people are just not ready to talk about, those things that are behind the scenes. They hold their cards close to the vest. But when you're thinking about working with them on their brand story, like how do you get them clear on what that story is, but also honoring like the fullness, the complexity that they bring to the table?
Um, it takes especially for the people who don't know their brand story or their brand story just isn't clear or it's shifted, because people often feel like their brand story that they created 15 years ago is the same story that they have now, and a lot of times those businesses have evolved and shifted and moved, and the clients look different, and they're speaking to different people. Um, We are able like, generally, it's just a matter of questions. It's asking questions and getting clear on who it is that they really wanna talk to and who they really want as a client. I think that a lot of that information is given when I'm talking to them about, well, who is your ideal client? If you could build that client and you could put that person in front of you and have 72 of them a month, who would that person be?
Mhm, mhm.
And we're able to flush out based upon that. And why is it that person? And also why they created the business in the first place. Because sometimes we forget our why. Like the why will get mixed up and then there's no story and there's you don't understand your brand and because you and
Yeah.
most of the time it's just because you don't know why you're even doing it anymore.
Yeah. So here's the thing, like, I'm curious about this just because of where we are right now. There's a lot of people, there are a lot of people that are leaving jobs who have been laid off recently, or like they're just trying to figure out what is next in their career path. So they might be coming to someone like you shortly because especially if they're building a business, like now I need to think about my brand story. Like for someone who's listening right now, what would you say to them, like, if you're considering even, like, working with you or someone who has your expertise, like, what are the things they should be asking themselves in preparation before they even meet with you?
I would say what their strengths are, um, like taking an assessment of their own strengths, the things that they're good at, the things that they would do for free. And I know people say it all the time, like, but because like sometimes people start businesses because they feel like it would make a lot of money, but it ends up not being in alignment with who they are.
Mm,
And so those are short. I would ask them to ask themselves what is the purpose of the business, at the end goal purpose. Like,
sure.
is it to create legacy? Is it to, um, fulfill a long goal? Is it to serve your community? Is it to sell it? Because some
Right.
people create businesses to later on sell them.
Absolutely.
Um, and so I would have them understand what they are doing and why first, and heavy on the why. Why this industry? Why this business? Why this model? Why? Why you in this
Yeah.
model?
Yeah.
And then everything will build from there. But you'd be surprised how many people don't know why from the beginning. And I think that's the most important question on
Yeah,
the
that speaks volumes to me because I talk to people all the time about a why. For me, the way I look at a why, one, it is defining for you your purpose in this moment, right? And or if this moment means 10 years from now, 30 years from now, it's still telling you where you're headed. But my reason for wanting to focus on the why is because the why is what grounds you when things get hard. And, like, as a business owner, as a even if you're working within another organization, like, why are you there to begin with? Why do you care about this mission? Why do you care about this service or product that you're producing? When we hit those hiccups, I need to be able to call back to something. Like, so if you work at a daycare, it might just be like, you know what? I want to make sure all of our babies are educated to the best of our ability. That could be your why. I feel really strongly about this, right? It could be that you plant trees. I care about our local environment, right? I want to make sure that we have a beautiful place to raise our families in. Something has to guide you as you're moving towards these goals, or I think things fall apart. At least that's been my experience.
No, I totally agree. I totally agree. The Like you said, the why, it is grounding, and that is the perfect word for it because you're always able to come back to it. And even like in your brand, when you feel like you've lost clarity, whenever you go back your why, it always brings you back. It'll
Yeah.
bring you back to your alignment of, okay, this is why I'm doing this. This I need to move. I need to shift.
I'm just gonna tell you, I feel a little called out because 'cause I'm like, maybe I need to sit with some things that I'm working on right now and get back to my why on it, but I appreciate that either way. This episode of Unpacked Culture Chronicles is brought to you by Culture Principles, a coaching and consulting practice helping people build real inclusion from the inside out. Because inclusion isn't just about policies, it's also about our people. And while strong policies matter, it's cultural awareness that brings them to life. Our cultural competency coaching program supports leaders, team members, and change makers alike in showing up with greater clarity, confidence, and care. To learn more, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. We'd love to work with you. So, Robin, I was wondering if, like, you have any examples or stories that you could share maybe about where identity was central to branding for a client of yours.
Absolutely. I'm gonna give you an example. I'm not gonna say any names, but I'm just gonna give you an example. I had a client who they were a couple, a same gender couple, and they worked in DEI, and they also own a company together, and
Okay.
they were Indian in nationality and origin. And so it was very important for them to encompass all of that in their branding. And so they had been in business 20 years, but they were rebranding, but they wanted to make sure that they were showing up fully and authentically so that people understood when they worked with them who they were receiving, right?
Mm,
Uh, and so I thought it was beautiful, and everything we did was centered around one of their identities, um, in their branding session, and a lot of times people feel like their identities are separate from their business, but, you are still showing up for your clients. So how can your identity be completely separate when you're showing up and they're still meeting you? And if you're showing up authentically you, then you're showing up in those identities, right? Like,
right.
and some of those identities you can't get rid of. Like, so for instance, my first identity would be Black, right? I show up, the first thing you see is she's Black, she's a woman. Those are identities, and so that's something that I can't, wash out of all of my branding, right? And they didn't want to wash any of that out of their branding, and I thought it was so beautiful. It was probably, like, it taught me the most. I would say it really taught me something to see these women in their Indian traditional garb. And they
Yeah.
were also bird watchers, and they were also very colorful people, and they wanted to do the session in their house because they have an office there, and they wanted to do that. So you got the rich colors of their life, you got the things that were important, but it also very much spoke to who they were as a brand.
Yeah. And I love that example because you're starting to bring in, like, maybe some of those smaller details people wouldn't think about, right? Like, what are the colors that inspire you? Like, if you're a bird watcher, does that work into your logo or
Mhm.
some theme around, like, what you're doing, even if it's an event that you're throwing? So, like, I think that's also interesting to think about. Like, I've said this on the podcast before, like, I'm a big knitter, right? And so, like, I often think in terms of I may not have shared that with you. I am always knitting. But, like, here's the thing, I find that I use language that reflects that without even thinking about it. So, like, the number of times that I'll say "weave" to people, and I don't mean the hair weave, I mean, like, literally fiber weaving, it's because it's so much a part of something that I enjoy in my life that feels like, it's just very present. And so I think it sort of seeps in without you even realizing it, but I only know now because, like, I have a large volume of, like, content I've created, and so there's certain words and or phrases that pop out to me, and I laugh because 'cause I'm like, "Look, you did it again." But it's because it is true to who I am as an individual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree to that, absolutely, and it makes sense now. It makes sense that you say it makes sense.
Okay, well, we can talk about that offline. But, here's I'm gonna throw out, like, maybe a little bit of a challenge that I saw the other day, okay?
Okay.
So, you said, like, with this Indian couple in particular, like, it was really important for them to bring their full selves, their identity to their brand. Now, I belong to speaking of knitting, right? I belong to a knitting community on Instagram, and one of the conversation threads that I had been following for a while were creators. So in this case, they were people who were like indie dyers of yarn. They made products that supported knitting, so forth. They were afraid to infuse their identity into their logo. They didn't want to appear on camera, no pictures of them because they were afraid that people would weaponize that against them, meaning in their case, they wouldn't buy their products because they knew they were talking to a person of color. And so, I ask this just because this is a very clear example that I can pull from my own world. But I am wondering, like, what do you say to people? How do you get them to show up? Do you ask them to show up? Or like what does that process look like if someone's literally afraid that they're gonna lose business because someone knows what their identity is?
I would say, it's so funny because I just had this conversation on a I'm also a brand strategist, and I just had a conversation with a brand strategy client about this very thing.
Okay.
That's why I was like, "Oh, wow, this is coming back." I would say to that person, I want you to think about who you really want your client to be, who you really want as a client, because just because someone it's just like a relationship. Just because someone wants to be with you don't mean you want to be with them, right?
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? Like so it's like to me, it's the same way in business. And honestly, I'm a person who believes that you operate in integrity of your own moral compass. And if that if someone doesn't align with that, even if there is a potential business relationship there, you don't move in that because then you're not moving in your own integrity. And honestly, eventually you're going to feel icky serving that person, even if there
Yeah.
is a money exchange, right? And so, but I do feel like there's a way of doing it. This particular person was trying to move into a different market that was more retail based, and this person felt like if they mentioned that their product was good for melanated people, that it would isolate them from those opportunities. And I disagreed. I told that person, what I would tell anyone is you then take that and you figure out what is the data around this. How many people I told this person, how many people of color are coming through this particular this person was talking about airports, putting their stuff in airports.
Okay.
Well, how many black people are traveling through airports, specifically women, and not even black because they have something for people of color. So get the
Sure.
data. And a lot of times people are okay, especially if it's business to business, they want to know what's in it for them. So give the data on why they should be serving or why they should support this community, right? And if it's not, if not, and they don't want to do that, do you really want to um, have that person as a client? And you have to see how that resonates with you. If you're okay with saying, I'm going to I don't know if I can use the word whitewash on here if I can't edit it out. But if I don't, like, I don't wanna necessarily whitewash or, uh Europeanize whatever it is that I'm doing. And ask yourself, is it okay? Do you feel okay with that? And if you are okay with that, because you're the person who has to live with that decision, and you're okay with being hidden in that way, then you check your motivation behind it and you move accordingly. But I would say I would check in with your own moral compass and what feels like it's okay to you. Because after a while, the money is cool, but in those quiet moments when you're not spending,
Yeah.
you have to think about what you're sacrificing.
Yeah. I think we share a similar philosophy on this. I will often say, like, all money is
Mhm.
not good money.
Yeah.
There I have to be able to say, like, I feel good about working with this person, this company at the end of the day, or else we can't do business together. And so I respect that. But I noticed that it feels like maybe there's an uptick in people that are wanting to hide. And a lot of this has to do with the climate that we're
Mhm.
living in,
Mhm.
where people are wondering, like, maybe why are you overly focusing on this? And to that end, like, every business has a target market.
Mhm.
That is how we do business. And so,
Mhm.
I personally would like people to be able to lean in. And I get that it's also, it's uncomfortable sometimes to be the face of, literally in that case, the face of your business, to have it like plastered all over things, et cetera. But like at the same time, can we lean into our own authenticity? Like I still have to show up as me at the end of the day.
Right. And
So
even if it's not your face on there, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have a face on there. Like, you may not want your logo with your face on it. You may want a logo that's something else. But I wouldn't go to the extent of masking yourself for business, like, and masking yourself that way. And to be frank and to be personal, I did that for years. I hosted events in DC and no one knew it was me because I
yeah.
had other people who could step to the forefront of that. I had other people who would host it and do all the things, and only the people who had to coordinate with me knew that it was me. And that benefits no one, you know. And at the time, and usually when you are in those situations when you're saying, "Oh, I need to, like, hide behind my identities," right? I need to not let out any of my identities so that I can get business. You have to ask yourself, "What am I afraid of?
Mm.
And what am I ashamed of?"
Ooh, honey, that's personal. Yes, yes. I
You know
agree
what
with
I
that.
mean?
I
And
agree with
so
that.
that's what I would add, that would be the conversation that I would have.
So, since you bring this up, and you can answer this as much or as little as you care to, but like, what shifted for you in your thinking that allowed you to step into the forefront?
Um, to be completely honest, and this is gonna sound so corny,
Lay it on us, lady.
and I'm currently doing it. Like, it's interesting. Like, we talk about branding and we always associate branding with the business, branding with money, branding with something tangible. I am rebranding my mind and the way that I think and the way that I see myself and the way that I show up. And what I had decided was I had to make a decision. And the decision was, would I continue to allow fear of whatever this is and shame of whatever this is to dictate the way that I maneuvered? Or do I really just want to go after what it is that I want to go after? And so I had to make an active decision which one I wanted more. And
Yeah.
once I made that decision, then it there is no other option because now I've decided I want this more. So now I
Yeah.
can only show up one way. That's it. There's only one way to show up because I've made a decision. And for me, it really came down to making a decision and looking at myself and saying, at the end of my life, do I want to be known for pretending or do I want to be known for me?
Mm. Ooh, that's a powerful question, honestly. And it takes a lot of, I think, soul searching. And what I'm hearing, from how you frame this is that we have to get comfortable sitting with ourselves and being honest. And I think sometimes that is the barrier itself. It's like I look in the mirror, I see something maybe I don't love about me. So, like, even as you mentioned shame, if I'm ashamed of something, most of the time people just want to bury that. They don't want to
Yeah.
dig into it. They don't want to figure out where that shame came from. They want to hide it, and so, like, when this is your identity, you gotta go to bed with that every night. And so, like, I see the point that you're making around this, and it's interesting that you use the framing that you did because I literally heard somebody say the other day to someone who was struggling with starting, right? They were also on their entrepreneur journey, and they were like, "But I don't know how to start, and I'm afraid of starting, and, like, how do you know it's time?" And the person said exactly what you said. You have to decide. That is the start of your journey. Once you decide, now you just have to do the thing. Whatever that happens to be. Take step 1, step 2, but you have to decide you are committed to this.
And I agree. Like, to me, everything in life that you do should be a decision because if every decision is intentional,
Yeah,
right? And so you can't make a decision without intention. And
yeah,
so so you have to decide, am I going to show up in all of my culture and all of me? Am I going to show up how, like you have to decide to do that. And sometimes people make the decision not to. Sometimes people make the decision to pretend. I just feel like that is not something that is sustainable over the long term. And if it doesn't come out or if it doesn't come out in a way that shows in your business or in your immediate life or monetarily, I definitely feel like it comes out in other ways, whether that's inside of your body, inside of your emotions, inside of your spirit. I feel like it comes out of other
yeah.
ways, you know?
I'm appreciating that you offered that, right? Like you're a spot on with that, that sometimes we may not notice it. Maybe intellectually we're just not there. Like, oh yeah, everything's fine. It's great. But I always have a stomach ache or my head is persistently hurting, right? It's your body is responding to this way that you're moving through life. And so yeah, to be able to walk in alignment means that you are literally in alignment, mind, soul, and body in this case. Um, so I just want to pivot a little bit because now, we've been talking a little bit about like the brand, but I also wanted to ask you about like your identity. So you shared with me that you have a lot of different identities going on, as we all do. But I'm curious how they shape your work, like how you do your work every day. So you've mentioned that you are a veteran, a lesbian, someone who moves again through the world with multiple identities as a Black woman, so forth. How do these things shape your work?
I mean, they shape everything. Like, so identifies queer. And but it shapes everything. Like one, it all of my identities, I think, allow me to see people differently because I am made up with so many identities that I can't look at people in as a monolith, like just one way. So I do um bring that in and I think it shapes the way that I see people and it shapes the way that I interact with people. As a veteran, it shapes the way that I think about structure.
Mm,
I think that shapes the way that, I think about discipline.
that's
Um,
yeah, absolutely.
as a queer person, it shapes the way that I think about people's body autonomy. It shapes the way that I think about a person's sexuality only being a piece of a person and not their whole identity.
Yep.
Um, it being Black shapes the way that I see myself and others, and in so many ways. That one is huge. Like, we could go down a rabbit hole. um, and being a woman shapes the way that I see things as well, naturally, just because of our natural natures and behaviors.
Mhm.
Um, and so I can't help but to bring all of these identities when I'm meeting someone. I can't help but to bring all of these identities in my business. It doesn't mean that, like, I in as far as who I serve, but in how I serve, right? And it also brings those your identities also lend to how you lead.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
and so for me, yeah, I think that all of my identities enter my business. They
Yeah.
enter my brand. They enter the way that we even take care of people.
Yeah. I
Um
I love how you broke down, like, each of those, and thank you for correcting me because and I wanna invite you if you're up for it to share a little bit more about so I just said, lesbian, you're like, "Actually, I identify as queer," so I appreciate the correction. But titles do matter for people. As you correct me on, like, the terminology I just used now, what is important to you about the title of queer or the identity of queer is better?
When it comes to me, I think that the title and the identity correction really only comes into play because I am a person who is not attracted to people based upon gender. So,
Okay.
like, I don't see someone and say, "Oh my god, she's a woman and she's fine." And if we're perfectly honest, I am very rarely attracted to women.
Okay.
I have a fiance who's a woman, but I was attracted to her energy. I was attracted to the way that she moved in her life, like,
Yeah.
in general. And it's the same thing with men, right? Like, I might see a man and be like, "Oh, you fine," but for the most part, my attraction to someone is not based off of any gender at all. It is
Okay.
completely and solely based off of how does this person spirit make me feel, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate you going into that. So what you just expressed, I have understood as pansexual.
Yes, I don't call it pansexual, I just call it a umbrella of
Yeah,
queerness.
that's okay. We're just introducing new
Yeah,
vocabulary today,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that
like,
was
I
my
I
understanding of that.
everybody has their own, like, version, and in this alphabet community, because baby, it's a lot of alphabets. Like,
Yes.
there is so many alphabets, and everybody has their own version of it. I used to not even really have language for it. I used to
Yeah.
just be, "I'm attracted to who I'm attracted to," and everybody just understood it, Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't, under the guise of bisexuality, or it wasn't under the guise of, lesbianism or queerness or any of that. It was just, I'm purely attracted to who I'm attracted to. And I started figuring out that it was people's energy that had me attracted to them, and
Okay.
not necessarily their gender.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And I appreciate you introducing that because a lot of these, like as we're saying, like there's new terms, there's a lot of alphabet letters
Mhm.
going on in this soup mixture here. It can be confusing to people, and like I don't want to make this difficult for people to understand. Like we like who we like, we love who we love, and
Right.
like to me it's just that simple. But I do want to at least introduce for folks, even as I stumble and make my own mistakes, I want to introduce language so that people know how to basically refer to people, or at least the better questions to ask. So like how do you identify?
And that's the best question to ask. Like, is how do you identify? Because everybody identifies differently. I mean, I have people in my life who identify all over the spectrum of the alphabet. And to be completely honest, I don't even understand some of the layers.
I
Like,
get it.
but I just respect that that's how they identify, and I think that's what, it comes down to, is just respecting how people see themselves, because people want people to see themselves the way that they feel like they should see themselves, or the way that they feel like some other book or action told them to see themselves, when really they reside in their body and you don't, so they can only speak to how it is
Yes.
they visualize
I,
themselves.
and we're full circle back at being authentic again.
Yep, and that's just being authentic to who they are, and the way they do that. And I also, like, think it's important to highlight to people, especially when it comes to sexuality and gender, right?
Mm,
Um that it really is, and more so sexuality than anything. It really is very much such a small part of a person's life. Meaning,
yeah.
it really is the definition of, okay, who I am open to having sexual relationships with. And that is such a small part of,
You're
like,
absolutely right. It's
their life, their like, all of it. And, people feel like that is, like, a main identity, like, that is, like, you know, everything people do who are in the alphabet, everything they do is alphabet. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, that is
I'm
just
I'm loving that you brought that to the table because no one asked like cisgender straight people like any of this stuff like how often do you think about this, talk about this? We don't ask
right.
those questions. And so to that end, you're right. It is an identity. And for some people, to be fair, they may push that identity first because it's that important to them. And that's not for me to
Mhm.
judge one way or another.
Yep,
Like
yep, yep.
you named earlier, right? You see your blackness as like identity one, your womanness is identity two.
Right.
And like we all get to structure that
Right.
whatever way we want. Um, but to me, like, I'm just curious to talk to people about, like, what their identities mean for them in these moments, like, not necessarily to
Exactly.
be the judge of it, but just to ask you these
Exactly,
questions.
exactly, and it's the same thing, I think, even with veterans. Like, I feel like people do respect that veterans, that's just one identity part of their identity, but then they also, think that veterans should move and act a certain way. A lot of times I see that too, and that's not true. Like, I can't imagine how many people meet me and when they find out I used to be in the military, like, "You used to be in the
That
military?"
doesn't work for me, that doesn't jive.
Mm. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like, what does somebody in the military look like? Like, what does somebody who used to be in the military act like? It's the same thing for, like, everything else other than the obvious. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is
yeah.
somebody
You're right, we lean on assumptions and stereotypes
Yeah,
often to be like, "You
right.
don't fit this mold." So, Robin, just to pivot again for a second, you also run the Vision Board Collective, and you're producing a docu-series on returning citizens. And I just thought this was really interesting. And I'm wondering, because you're engaged in this work, how do you view storytelling as a way to sort of shift the way that people are re-entering society after incarceration?
Yes. I think that thank you for asking me that actually. Storytelling is probably one of the best initiative pushers to me because it you hear it from the horse's mouth. Like, to be able to have someone tell their own story, one, creates a level of ownership for that person and their story. Um, and it breaks down, what people already think about people or what like we talked about earlier, we talked about uh stereotypes.
Mm,
And it breaks down stereotypes and it turns them upside down. And so that can and sometimes those barriers can only be broken down through storytelling, through having people say what it is that they experienced and how they experienced them. Like, we're also in this docuseries, we're also like highlighting the organizations that are helping individuals who are leaving incarceration and how they're doing that. It all started basically because of an organization that was supporting people that I seen had a 0% recidivism rate in JRA clients in Maryland, and I just didn't understand what they were doing so different,
mhm.
that made it so that they did that, and in that, it was I noticed that they had a mental health approach first, which deals with each individual owning their story, right?
Okay.
And moving through that and not accepting what other people are telling them they are or what they're experiencing, but allowing them to move through their own stories based upon their own experience. And I think that is very powerful. And I think that um, I'm a girl who's always going to lean more into a documentary before I lean into a movie.
Okay.
Um, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's so boring," but it is because somebody owned that story. Like,
Mm,
if I wanna watch a movie, I want the movie to be made up. I don't want to really watch a movie that unless it's, like, from the past, I really and the person who actually lived it, wrote it, I don't wanna watch a movie about somebody telling somebody else's story who couldn't even tell you their story.
Yeah, I hear
Uh,
that.
and so they that and change comes with the telling. Like if people aren't talking about how we met individuals who were left, didn't even know they were being released. After 40 years of incarceration, didn't know that they were being released and were left at a doctor's appointment. It, like,
Wow.
left. Like like, left there, and they were released from there, not knowing what to do, looking for payphones, and they're in a society that has completely changed, and if they didn't tell their story, no one would know that people can actually be released that way. They would assume
Right.
everybody is going to a halfway house and they're being set up. No, some of these people are being released with nothing. And some people don't even know they're being released, and that was, like, the mind boggling thing for that was
Yeah.
mind boggling to me,
Yeah.
and so the non-preparation of the families having a home plan. A home plan is not a home plan, it's a home person, like, they just making sure that they have somewhere to go, but they didn't equip the family or
Right.
the person with how the person even is gonna be released, and what the challenges they may face when they're released because 'cause you're dealing with people who hadn't had freedom interaction in all that time, and you do stuff like throw them a surprise party because you think that that's what they want, only to find out that that is can be traumatizing
Yeah,
to
it's
some.
traumatizing, sure, sure.
Like, so.
Yeah. I'm you just said a mouthful with that, like, and it seems unbelievable that in this day and age that we're dealing with things like this because these are simple fixes, right? Like,
Right.
notify people ahead of time, make sure that there's a
Right.
plan, and yeah, that feels a little weird to me that we have not done more work around that. But I want to tie this all into sort of how we even started this conversation. So we were talking about like you are a brand strategist, you are a storyteller, you're helping other people tell their stories. But I know in this particular work that you're doing around this docu series that you're helping other creators learn how to tell stories responsibly without dehumanizing or marginalizing people. And so I'm just curious, like as a final question here, like what's your approach to teaching that kind of care in your narrative work, particularly given what you just said about like how careless we are with the releasing of people, if you will, in the system?
I think that teaching people that, and shout out to my partners in that, Cassandra Riddick and Sadi Kali, the amazing photographer Sadi Kali, who was it was very important to him that we teach people this. And I think it was very important for all of us, but he is the one that brought that to the table. And it is important because sometimes people feel like they are helping people, or they're, especially people who wanna tell stories, that they're helping people by shedding light and recording and doing all these things, and really it turns into an act of exploitation.
Yeah.
And so teaching them how to immerse themselves into a community and not take from that community that already doesn't have a lot, but to add to it, um, in a way that is good for them, and not in a way that is just like, oh, we're just gonna throw all this money into this space, or whatever the case may be, but in a way that is helpful to them is really important. There's so much I could
Yeah.
say about that, but I know our time is a little shaky on
Yeah.
that. But
Well, maybe we'll have you come back on because I'm really curious, like, as this docuseries evolves, like, I feel like this can be a really powerful story to tell. I mean, obviously, you're documenting it in a visual format, for people, but I feel like there's the behind the scenes, if you will, that would be really interesting to just understand because there not everything's gonna make it past the editing stage, and I get that piece.
at all, and let me say this real quick, because this is a show about culture. Incarceration is not only a Black issue.
Correct.
Incarceration is not only a people of Latin descent issue. There is a little bit of everybody in incarceration, and they're all being shorted in their experience, and many are not coming out in a good space, and their families are just not equipped for what they've experienced and the trauma they experienced. I just wanna put that out there. It
Yeah,
is not only a Black issue, and a lot
I appreciate that.
people think incarceration, and they only think Black, and we've talked to some of everybody.
Yeah. Robin, I think we're gonna have to sit down for another conversation because I
Yeah.
really would like to dig into that. As much as I'm producing content for other people, like, I feel like this is every time I have a guest, you all are offering me a master class on your expertise in your areas as well. So I appreciate your being here and, like, sharing some of the background both professionally and personally today and laughing with me and just kind of flowing with the conversation. So as my final question, I always like to ask people, like, is there anything that is coming up in your business, anything that you want to share with people, and how do they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me, on LinkedIn. I am Robin Kenyatta. On Instagram, I am robin.kenyatta.photog. The Vision Board Media has an Instagram, and The Reflective Edge also has an Instagram, and a LinkedIn and all the things. As far as what's coming up, we are doing a series of events called the Creative Content Suite that will be traveling from city to city, offering business owners the ability to create content in a way that is full of luxury. And when they leave, they should leave with at least 30 days worth of content. And that is
Love
not
that.
only
Yeah.
pictures, but that is video as well as strategy in some other areas.
Okay.
But find us. We're
I love it. And folks, I've had a chance to talk to Robin about what this experience looks like, and I'm like, I need to be there because it sounds amazing. So please do go to our show notes and check out everything that she shared. And again, Robin, I just want to really thank you for coming in and just being so open to walk through all of these things and just sit here and chat with me. I really do appreciate it, and I think that you're bringing a new lens to, how people can think about their own brands, what things are important before they go in to meet with people like yourself and your team. And maybe just some things to consider about how we are showing up in our full authenticity. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. It makes a big difference in helping us grow this community. And if you're looking for coaching or resources to take your cultural awareness to the next level, visit us at culture-principles.com/coaching. And remember, where curiosity leads, connection follows. Be well.